Thank you for being here today. My name is Risa Shimoda. I'm the Executive Director of the River Management Society. And I'm here with Becca Price, who will be speaking with you in a second, and then two awesome people who are experts in water trails, Tali and John. They'll introduce themselves also. So this is one of our monthly river management roundtables, and thrilled to have you here on a hot summer day. And I'll let Becca take it from here. Thank you.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us. I'll cover a couple of housekeeping items. We are recording today and we will send that out after the discussion and presentation. We'll also be sending that to folks who took the survey and could not attend today. We welcome you to be on camera. This kind of the point of this group is to get to know each other and share resources. So we'd love to see you if you're able. We invite you to share questions in the chat as we go along. We'll also have opportunities for discussion throughout. Also, if you're sharing from your water trail or program, we just ask people to be respectful, be concise, but we do have an hour together, so we're excited to hear from you and learn about how this group can support you. This is one of our monthly river management roundtables. We meet on the second Tuesday of the month. It's organized and hosted by the River Management Society. And we invite pretty much anyone who works on rivers as stewards, managers, planners, recreation folks, pretty much anybody with a stake in rivers to join us. We invite you to share or to suggest topics for these meetings. And really just have a time to learn together.
Thanks, Becca. So we're going to be led today by a couple of folks who who work on water trails. I'll tell you a little bit more. But Tali MacArthur works for the Pennsylvania Environmental Council, and she leads the effort to coordinate the many water trails in Pennsylvania. And John Wenck works for Iowa DNR and is the honcho for the water trails in Iowa. And just for a little bit of context, we first met interested, and we're seeking interest in who wants to learn more about water trails, learn from each other about water trails. And we had an overwhelming response back in December. So we got back together in January because it really was, we had over 100 people signed up in December. And in January, we got focused a little bit more on what the types of things that people were interested in. Instead of "are you interested," we moved to kind of "what are you interested in." And then what you'll see as a result of that, again, maybe not as overwhelmed, but impressed with how many people were interested in water trails. And that includes a variety of types of water trails, blueways, for instance. And John, because he's awesome, developed a Survey 123 program that we asked for folks to respond to. And we were still getting responses in today, but well over 60 people responded. At least half of those, more than half of those folks are here today. And we're going to share what we heard from you based on the responses to that survey. So again, this is going to reflect your interest, and then we're going to move from here on to, okay, now what do we do with this information, with your input, with your interest, and let's get some stuff done. So I'll hand it over to John.
Thank you, Risa. Good afternoon, everyone, or afternoon here in Iowa anyway. So yeah, I mean, Risa gave me credit for putting this survey together, but I'll have you know there were several back and forths with the whole committee, Tali, James, Risa, and Becca, and others as well. And also Ben Fowler, who I think he's on the call here. He has a lot of expertise in this. We took most of his suggestions, but not all. We did the best we could. But yeah, I was really excited to try out the Survey 123 to allow people to geographically you know, create a polygon for their area. So we have that in data. And of course, all those polygons is associated with all your survey answers. So we have yet to really dig into the or to analyze the responses, but we've done some, I would say, initial analysis that will, I think, be interesting as we go through here. But yeah, this was a team effort by far, and it was a great collaboration to come up with this. So I'll pass it over to Tali.
Everyone. Yeah, for those of you, like Risa said, we had so many people demonstrate interest in sort of wanting to talk about and learn about statewide water trail programs and water trail programs. John and I, this is the third time that we're kind of seeing you all, but don't want to make the assumption that everyone knows and remembers who we are. So I'll just do a quick, as Risa said, I'm Tali MacArthur. I'm the Pennsylvania Water Trail Program Coordinator. In our situation, it's a nonprofit organization that coordinates the Pennsylvania Environmental Council. And then we partner with our Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources and our Fish and Boat Commission to implement this program. We have 29 water trails designated throughout the state. Well over 22 or 2,300 miles. Each of those water trails has a local manager. And my role is to convene those managers and share resources with them and provide technical assistance as necessary. Although sometimes I'm overwhelmed by their knowledge and I learn more from them than I think they sometimes learn from me. But I'm really looking to learn from others in this community of how you are successfully going about, managing water trails, resources, tools, challenges, and how can we share those so we're not reinventing the wheel and that I'm not overwhelming John with my questions because he was the first person I reached out to, but it's not fair that he's the only person I reach out to. So one of the questions that we asked in the survey when we were creating these slides, we were trying to figure out how to title this slide. And I just said, God, some of these situations look so chaotic. And then we put, okay, what is your level of chaos? So basically what we're talking about here is, how complicated would you say, is your water trail system? And in how many different directions do you feel pulled? So that's kind of where this came from. But basically your responses were kind of indicated here. So, some of you are managing one trail in one state or maybe multiple trails in one state. My situation, I think John's situation, maybe you're looking at trails or you're working on trails in sort of a region of the US. I have to say, I don't envy those of you that are working on multiple trails in multiple states. I can't imagine the sort of jurisdictional, logistical challenges that keep you up at night. But again, we would really love to learn from, how that impacts your work and how you've overcome challenges, with respect to anything from, stream side ownership and ownership of the water trails and the waterways. I know different states and different regions have complicated public trust doctrines and all that. So that's really a topic I'm especially curious about myself. And then the other option was one trail in two states. And then I think we had another comment, which I have to cheat on here, which was I work on water trails in a multi-county region and promote water trails in a multi-state region. So that's kind of like what we heard from you in terms of sort of where your roles, responsibilities, and challenges lie. So then we can go ahead and do the next slide. So then we kind of wanted to know, where are all of you organizationally employed or volunteering, or at least spend your time when you're thinking about water trails. So we asked you about your organization type. As I said, I work for a nonprofit organization as the coordinator of the statewide program. Obviously, John is in the state agencies. But kind of, so where are we and who do we, who employs us? So you'll see the greatest sector, of course, is nonprofits. Then we have our state leads, federal water trail managers, and then a small number in sort of the county, city, and for-profit. I'm kind of curious about the roles. So the for-profit roles, the role of the for-profit organizations in water trail management. That's what kind of draws my attention here, because I don't really know too much about that, whether that's outfitters or sort of another entity. So that might be curious for me to learn more about. So that's kind of where we are. And then next slide is so we got is like, what's your trail system like, who employs you, but then sort of like what's your title, your position, your role. And I know a lot of times a title or position is completely meaningless and doesn't at all define, the amount of work that you need to do or the effort that you put in. But we did kind of want to understand, again, a little bit more about who's in the room. So this is, I'm sure most of you are familiar with word clouds. So this is, answers that appeared the most or got the most number of ticks in the tick box in the check boxes are bigger font. I'm sure you're all familiar with this. So words like coordinator in your titles, water trail manager is in your title, a lot of volunteer engagement, and maybe a land manager who takes on some trail management issues. You're working in recreation, you're working in landscape design, teaching about trails and recreational access as perhaps in a university setting, consultants, trail designers, architects, and engineers. So this was important to us because we're really trying to understand what are the skill sets that we're going to have access to when we create this sort of community of practice, this working group, and who can we tap into for various expertise. And again, it's not just your title that says that, but also the next couple of slides will continue to inform us as to sort of the makeup of the folks in the room. And again, it's just going to allow us to know the resources and the skill sets that we as a community can tap into as we are learning from one another. So yeah, I guess I'll turn it back over to John.
Thanks, Tali. Yeah, looking at that word map, it makes you realize all the different roles that you need to create a water trail, maintain it, manage it, and just like the different titles of people or their roles in whatever agency or company that they're in, there's also all these skills that come, and in the survey we wanted to know what skills you all had. I mean, all your skills. We wanted to know what skills, were the most popular, and also which ones you thought were, your top one or two skills. And part of this, is to identify who are our prospective presenters, where are our experts and how can we get them to help teach us what they know. And again, we're sort of building this I don't know if it's an organization or what it is. It's certainly a working group, and on how we can better communicate and share ideas and learn from each other, as Tali was saying. So this graphic here is a little odd. I put it together. There were so many skills that we listed, and we did get I think 5 respondents had checked the box other and identified skills that were different from what we had included in the survey. But you can see the top one, and you go from the bottom up, so you can see that the number corresponds to the number of respondents that selected. Like project management was by far the most popular or most common skill that people had, and relationship building and diplomacy, good skills to have when you're working on water trails and you've got landowners and different agencies in different states and counties. And yeah, it's really good to have those skills. But as we go, up the list in this case, you can see research in this slide was, we had 19 people. But all these different skills are needed, you know, to develop a water trail and work on water trails. So we'll go to the next slide. And again, I put project management in this slide so to contrast against the less popular or less common skills. And you can see some of these less common skills. GIS, 19 people identified that as a skill. And then you keep going, you've got, you know, photography, videography, interpretation, you know, like what a naturalist would do. And then risk management and safety coordination, important when you're out there on the water and you're working with people who are leading trips or whatnot. And then at the very end here, I was actually happy to see that we had 2 people who are, you know, skilled in designing in-channel structures, such as J hooks, and you know, those are really key. So anyway, we'll go to the next slide, and that'll show the 5 other skills that people had. And, you know, teaching, that's a really important skill. Retired environmental science teacher. I mean, we need as many of those as we can to help, you know, educate people. And then I'm sure this was Ben or Ryan who probably identified the 360 photography and drone imagery video. That's becoming a very popular tool. In fact, we're contracting with Ben and Ryan to do the Little Sioux River. Right now, unfortunately, it's out of its banks and being crazy. So eventually, we hope we can get that done later this year. Boating, yeah, skills in boating, important. Planning on a regional level, visioning, site design, public engagement. You know, we didn't mention public engagement in the skills. And then the last one there, coordination and networking, team building, and grant administration. So we had grant writing, but not grant administration. And if you're ever working with federal grants, that's really important to know how to administer grants. So that's it. But yeah, a lot of skills. Yeah, it's exciting that I see a lot of folks, or a lot of skills that I'd like to hear from those folks and learn more. So go ahead and go to the next.
You're muted, Risa.
Unmuting. When we got to the, you know, asking folks about what are the challenges that you face, what are the priority projects, or what's important to you as an organization or as an individual in your water trail. We have 5 items here. The top one was overwhelmingly the most noted as the #1 priority. So we had everyone rank the various challenges, organizational structures, partnerships, coordinating and networking, management and maintenance. And it may be that it was #1 with most people because there are the most number of elements in it. But you can see this is how do we do our organization? How do we run it? How do we sustain it? How do we fund it? How do we make it do better? Next, pretty close to #1 was balancing development, user impact, and resource protection. So that's the, you know, the conservation and protection side of wanting people to go out and use the water trail. We want you to come out. We want you to use it. We don't want you to wreck it. You know, how do we do that balancing? And I think that has become more important as more water trails have become more popular. Then the next two, #3 and #4 there, were similarly, they had a similar response. Technical resources, planning, and toolbox development. We want to have some stuff that we can go to when we need to, when we think about it. Hopefully it's there for us as a planner or sign design or whatever. And then also building relationships with landowners, developing easements. And those 2 types of needs seem like it made sense to me that they were not #1, but it was, for many people, it was #2. you know, it came right after the most important one. And then, accessibility, inclusion, and universal design was, you know, was also, but not, you know, not the top one. One thing that was, hold on a second.
And while you're looking, Risa, I think it's important to state, if I might jump in here, is all of these are important. But part of what we're doing is trying to find out what people are most interested in, so we can sort of identify where we go next, you know, and try to hit those high priority ones. But I think we all recognize all of these things are important.
Right, so the final one was a little bit different. No one of those who responded up until we had 56 responses said that addressing dams and hazards was number one. No one listed it as their second priority. It was just interesting. It just didn't show up as a priority issue until we got to like third priority. So looking at the other ones that were listed early on, it's maybe not that surprising, but it was interesting that no one had it as their first priority. I think no one would also indicate that it's not important. And it's something that's kind of complicated, and yeah, it's a thing to discuss because there's sovereign immunity among public jurisdictions, towns, counties, and federal land management, river administration people. And it's not always clear where that ends. And when there's easements, or when when there's private landowners who are allowing a water trail to use their property, you know, who's responsible for all that stuff. It's really important. Okay, next slide, I guess. And so this is probably not surprising. With the word cloud shows how often we heard the words that you see, the 4 words that you see. So a lot of people want to learn. And, you know, it's not clear people want to learn because they think they don't know, or they want to learn because they know a lot and want to continue to learn, or that they know that there might be a network out there that they're unaware of that might, you know, provide more input or learning opportunities than they know about. So you can see, you know, how people responded. But hopefully all of that adds up to kind of what we've started this year and what we're doing today, which is learn, network, collaborate. And the good part of that is that, you know, we sort of have a tool. These river management roundtables have been successful at gathering you guys and gals, and creating a forum for getting to this level of organization or detail. And now we have to say, okay, now what? It's fine to sit here and learn. It's fine to read somebody's document, or it's fine to listen to a recording. But now what should we do? And importantly, what can we do together so that my water trail work will benefit, my organization will benefit? So I want to benefit me and my group and contribute to the whole, so that there's a greater level of understanding about what we're all doing. So next slide, I guess. Oh, you know, before we get to this, I forgot to ask a question of could you go back to slide? Sorry, Becca, I goofed. Are there any issues or topics that we didn't list here? This is a summary of the challenges that we heard from you. Is there anything that you think that we've just completely ignored? If so, please put it in the chat, I guess. It may be that we ignored it, not on purpose. And it may be that we collectively, you know, added it, acknowledged it, and tried to include it in one of these 6 topics. So if there's anything, you know, it may be that we just overlooked something that you put in your survey and we didn't realize we should call it out. Okay, I think we can go back a couple.
Yeah, I'll just if I can jump in for a second
Yeah,
here. I
sure,
remember
absolutely.
this was one of the most difficult questions to kind of get right on the survey. It's funny, you think surveys aren't that hard until you put one together, and then you realize, wait, is somebody going to interpret that right? Or how long is it going to take somebody to answer that question? Are we going to lose people? But there was a lot of like lumping here that maybe had we been able to consider other ways. So, you know, at one point, I think, so this is 6 items, which is hard enough when you're sitting there to drag up and down and you move something to 2 and then just something jumps to 3, and then you're not sure because the 4th one maybe comes before the 3rd one. So you can appreciate, like, at one point, I think we had a list of like 17 things.
Yeah,
and I was
we
just
did.
like, yeah, I was like, nobody can prioritize 17 things. So there was definitely a lot of lumping here. And it, you know, it could be that, you know, for you, you know, there's something in about user impact that you know, would have put on accessibility or something like that. But we did try to lump here kind of together. And the hope was that through this conversation and our follow-up conversations that we could tease this apart a little bit more. But you know, I did see just now something popped up in the chat about litter and trash, and that's absolutely a concern everywhere. John is, I think, missing a huge river cleanup event or something like that to be here today. And he
Yeah.
was telling us about the
Yeah.
number, the amount of trash and litter and tires that are pulled out. So in a way, we might have in our minds kind of lumped that with resource, you know, user impact and resource protection.
Yep.
But that's not to mean that a more specific issue, you know, can't be addressed in future conversations of this group.
Yeah.
So far that was the only one I really caught in the chat, but I do see that other ones are
Yeah.
popping up, and maybe somebody else can comment on that.
Li-
And then I guess the other, there was something else I wanted to say on this. So yeah, so primary challenges, and, you know, and also, sort of your primary, needs for, you know, wanting to learn more about. So again, that's one of the reasons we did this too, is because we don't want to leave anything off the table, but, as you'll see in terms of like how often we're going to meet, we definitely do need, you know, to kind of prioritize, you know, based on the responses to this survey. So, not that, if you put something, if something was a 1 for you and it ended up being a 5, you know, collaboratively, that doesn't mean that we won't have a discussion or a meeting or, you know, a working group, focused on it.
Yeah, thanks, Tally. And I'm looking at the comments. Log jams and litter is big. Maintaining navigability is big. We did a roundtable with a couple of folks about that specific topic, and it's not that straightforward.
Right.
You know, who manages the river is different than who is responsible for getting the tree out today. And
Yep.
you know, sometimes it's volunteers, sometimes it's state, sometimes it's a friends group that calls the county. And, you know, so it varies. But in terms of who's responsible, it's not always possible to identify that, because it's not something that someone wrote into either bylaws or state maintenance responsibilities, aside from districts that are like flood control districts, where, you know, their mission is to keep the waterway clean, and there aren't too many of those. So that's an important topic. Promotion of use and evaluation of success, that's a really big one too. How do we know we're successful? Do we just count bodies?
Well, and how do you
Maybe.
define success is even
How do
harder.
you define what is success? And is success being so overrun that you're pounding the banks and everything's all messed up that way, or full of trash?
That's funny. Yeah, that's funny that came up, because my DCNR partner, I just was going through emails after having gotten back from vacation, and she says, "Do we have any idea how many people actually use water trails?" And I'm like, we don't have, you know, like, how, I don't know. I'd be so curious. You know, you hear so much about like trail counters on land trails, but I don't know how. That'd be a really interesting conversation, you know, to have. And, you know, use, and is success really defined by numbers of users, or are there other measures of success? That's really curious.
Right. I think that's huge. And is it quality, quantity versus quality? You know,
Right.
there, that's like a whole thing. I think that, and we can probably, what's cool about what we're doing, you guys, is that we may be able to define at least preliminarily define what the answers to our questions, or set up the framework, because we don't really have a whole lot of precedent. We don't have the Water Trail Society telling us what to do. So I think our collective wisdom and experience will help inform how we develop at least some frameworks, maybe not the numbers or specific quantitative measures. Paul's asking about mapping data updates and data accessibility. That's huge. Cell phone data has been used. And, you know, James is on here. James, raise your hand. That our National River Recreation Database Manager, who's and the data that supports the National Rivers Project. We now have almost 60 or more, maybe more than 60 partners. And when we first started, um, our biggest challenging people said, or our biggest detractors said, you'll never be able to keep your data current, so don't bother. Well, we continued and we're doing our best, but that is something that's really important. Jack just said the French Broad paddle trail is just now starting a visitor use study, and that may be something that could be a template, and it would probably need to be repeated, you know, every so often to, you know, monitor how whatever visitor use is capturing there, how that changes over time. So lots to discuss, and this is giving us an idea of some of the things that you're interested besides what we've identified in this list. Like John said, it's all important, and the role of the working group will be to either prioritize how we address these and how we share them, how we provide what it is that we come up with. Okay, I guess we can go on to the next, go ahead. The one that, yeah. So this is getting into the nuts and bolts, you guys. Most people said meeting quarterly would be good. No reason to not think that that wouldn't be the most popular. And I would say for sure that once we get going, there'll be like little subcommittees who are working on something specific that can meet as often as they want, or can meet by just emailing periodically. Go ahead, next slide, please. And then we put this up just to indicate that this is probably really predictable. And it's hard to jump into another area of responsibility where this is your thing and this is your priority. However, we did have a few people say, I'd like to work on it. So we know who you are. We have your name and email address. We will be in touch, but this would be the group that can help steer the prioritization of both the topics and the products, if you will, you know, if we come up with toolkit elements. But we appreciate everyone's feedback. Yeah, so it was that same kind of group of people said they would be happy they would like to work on a steering committee. And again, anyone can participate at any time on steering committee or helping work on this. But this group will be the seminal group that kind of identifies our initial direction and maybe, you know, our mission and what do we want to, our vision, if that's what do we want to be in 3 years or 5 years. So that's sort of where we are. I think that that's what we have in terms of providing feedback on the survey. Going forward, what our thinking is that we'll get in touch with the folks who have raised their hand that they would like to help on the steering committee, probably meet within a month or so, and then be back to this group, whoever's indicated they are, whether they signed up for today or one of the other previous two roundtables, with what we'd like to do, and then start moving forward. There are a lot of questions that have to be answered, like where does this information live? How does the group communicate with each other? There are a variety of tools that we can call on. And yeah, so any initial feedback or suggestions, anything that we completely missed that you're dying to share? And I'll put an and in there. Any suggestions for what the group, where the group should focus on first? What should we do first? Someone might think we need bylaws first. Someone might need to, might think we need to go on a river trip first. I don't know, whatever you guys think. Hi, Mimi, nice to see you. If you've heard of the logical lasting watches that the Park Service did, Mimi's work in Iowa, DNR has been amazing and important and around for a long time as guidance for us all.
She put together our water trails development manual, our water trails plan, and helped a lot out with the dams plan. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mimi, but
No, that's right. And then a
Yeah.
bunch of implementation
yeah.
since then. I can't seem to get away. I got caught in the, what are those little like eddy things? Like, yeah, in 2008, and I haven't been able to get out, but I'm having a good time. So I'm not trying very hard to get out of the eddy.
Well, we'll be really careful and protective of your email address, Mimi. We're inundated.
Thank you. I just think the whole thing is exciting, and I love it that, I mean, my 2 cents worth, and I've been doing this for a while, is the 2 most valuable things with this work, because it's so complicated. If you look at the whole spectrum of what makes a water trail and what a water trail needs to be well managed, it's about time, working with them, and also collaboration. And this kind of a group offers us to connect with people who are from different regions that can share their experiences over time, and we can help to build the next, generation of knowledge. So I'm super excited.
Yeah, yeah. And one thing that's really great too is the water trails have come from different places. The idea for one, the initial organizers have come from all different places. You saw that pie chart that had the different kinds of organizations that we work for. So the perspectives are really valuable, because if there were no like federal agency voices, we would miss something big if we just didn't have those voices. So and I think that's the testament to, I wouldn't say it's perfectly reflective of RMS's membership, but the variety of types of organizations and expertise is very reflective of our membership. So it's great. Paul, we got some hands, Paul, and then Margaret. Paul, go ahead and unmute yourself. Hey.
Sure. Hey there, everybody. Yeah, Paul Dudley, state of Tennessee. I'm on the GIS side of things, and just wanted to, I'm new to this group and to Blue Way Trail data management, and I would love to. I don't know if this group is part of that. I think Mimi kind of touched on it, but it'd be awesome to see maybe some states that have a more mature, maybe data management and water trail system. I would love to see, some sort of maybe a presentation, just kind of like sharing. I know that's been beneficial in a lot of other organizations that I'm in, and that would certainly, I know, help us in Tennessee. And even just seeing stuff in the chat, I'm already seeing some things where, oh, okay, that's pretty interesting, and maybe something to research there. I don't know if that's where this group fits in, but I think that would be amazing to see from my perspective.
Well, definitely could be, and they've come, like I said, they've started in different ways. The most different, and Nancy's not here, Nancy Stewart's at Minnesota DNR, right? They were legislated to do water trails, so they are annually funded, and that's why they have 4,500 miles of water trails in Minnesota, because they just they said this will be so it is. But I think this
So
is
any of those lessons learned from folks like that sound awesome to me.
Mhm. Yeah, because they've been doing it for 40 years. They're
Yeah,
way not new to this. Margaret,
I-
please.
I am here. Sorry. This is Nancy.
Oh, hey.
Hey. Um, yeah, I don't do the GIS part of our program, but we have a really awesome like setup for all of our stuff. So I can probably hook you up with a GIS person to talk to. Then you can speak the same language.
We're
That
gonna
would be
protect
great. Thank you. I'll put my contact info in the chat.
Cool.
Nancy,
Yeah.
since you're like the queen of water trails on the whole planet, we're gonna protect your email address also.
Oh, that's okay. I don't mind.
I'm excited to see that Lisa and Margaret are wanting to speak, and I'm just going to say one thing real quick. I mean, Paul, I think it was the webinar that in December that Risa was talking about that got like the RMS's record number of registrations was really just 3 state water trail programs talking about who they are, what they are, how they came about, what their challenges are. So, and I think that's what kind of really got this, hey, we need to talk about this more. So yeah, I mean, I know I would love to hear, I would join a webinar where 3 other states talked about their programs. And so yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah. Paul, also, I mean, what you just asked and the responses that you're getting is exactly what this group is hopefully going to be set up to do, is to share information with others, share experiences with others, because no one has it all figured out. And this is, I'm excited for water trails nationally, just because this group is gearing up to do just that. So, and the second thing I wanted to say is I do the GIS for the state water trails in DNR or in Iowa, and I can certainly send you my schema, and I can share my data with you. We use ArcGIS Online a lot. You don't need coding skills, and it's a really easy way to share your information to the public. But I can share that schema and data with you.
That would be great. Thank you so much, John.
Hey,
Thanks,
Risa,
John.
that December webinar was recorded, wasn't it?
Mhm. Yeah.
So Paul, I presented about the Georgia River Guide mobile app at that webinar. John presented about the Iowa program. Tali presented about the Pennsylvania program. I'm sure they could make that recording available, and that would give you 3 programs right there that you could learn a lot about immediately. And again, we built the River Guide app on the ArcGIS system and can license that app development tool to any other state that wants to put their information and branding on it. And you got a quick to market tool that every user in your state already has in their pocket.
Thanks,
That's awesome.
Andrea.
Yeah,
I
thank
want
you,
to
Andy.
honor the people who have been sitting there patiently with their hands raised. Margaret, please.
No worries. I'm Margaret Spalding. I'm with the South River Watershed Alliance. We're a really small grassroots river keeper for the South River, which starts in the city of Atlanta. So a huge part of our work is to introduce people back to recreating on the river rather than avoiding it and being afraid of it. And I'm sure, as a lot of states, designated use is a huge part of our strategy for improving water quality. But I just saying that just to say, similar to what you are all saying, is that I think this is a great start, but maybe digging deeper into what are the challenges. Those of us who are challenged have probably specific challenges, but also a lot in common, and then maybe doing some case studies and workshops around that, where we're able to get a little more customized info and things that we need. Because again, as many of you all, I'm sure our resources are very limited. So nothing new, just kind of reiterating.
No, but it's important to remember when there are other people in the room who have been doing this for a long time. Lisa, you're up.
Thanks. So I'm Lisa Ronald. I work out of Montana with American Rivers, and we've just been in part of some very, very beginning conversations about a possible water trail designation on the Kootenai River in northwestern Montana, which is a really rural part of Montana that's seeing a lot of use post-pandemic, and there are a lot of use concerns that the infrastructure doesn't exist to support the impact, to support the current use impacts and the potential from the future. And so wanting to figure out a way to navigate that space. And I think similar to Margaret, you know, I'd love to see this group be a resource for people like me who are like, we don't have a water trail. We don't know anything about them. We don't know what we're doing. To be able to learn from folks who have done this work. And just wanting to lastly sort of throw out a similar model. I'm also part of an ONRW resource group through the Wild and Scenic Rivers Coalition. And similarly, that group formed out of a need to support a bunch of people in disparate places who kind of were doing the same type of work, but that also there were a lot of differences. And so one of the tasks that group kind of started to do and is still doing is pulling together, like, what are some of the common resources? What are some of the common experiences, as well as where there are divergent paths or challenges that are unique to particular states given a particular landscape. So it's been really interesting to parse out both of those tracks of commonality and difference as a way to support people who are just coming into the filter.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa. I wanted to share one question we had in the chat real quick. Food Shed Alliance asked, do we have a definition of a water trail? So kind of piggybacking off of what you're saying, Lisa, some people are like this is a totally new concept in some places. And Ben commented and shared, Ben Fowler commented and shared a definition from the Michigan. He said a majority of definitions are similar to what a Michigan water trail resources say here. A water trail is a designated route along a lake, river, canal, or bay, specifically designed for people using small boats like kayaks, canoes, single sailboats, or rowboats. The trails, sometimes called blueways, are the aquatic equivalent of a hiking trail or greenway. They feature well-developed accesses and launch points, are near significant historical, environmental, or cultural points of interest, and often include nearby amenities. So great definition, and also a reminder that sometimes just the vernacular is not common everywhere. Some.
I'll just add real quick, in Pennsylvania, we will only designate a water trail, like I said, if there's like a local managing entity. And I know in one of the very first conversations we had, somebody mentioned, it might have even been Ben, actually, like talking about what's the difference between a waterway you can paddle on and a water trail. And for us, you know, we really think about a water trail as being that there are resources there for the user. So we won't designate a water trail unless there's a map and signage and wayfinding and somebody that you can contact if you're in trouble on the trail, or you have questions about the trail, or you want to plan a trip itinerary on the trail. So for us, you know, a water trail means that it has a specific resource that you can go to as a user to learn more about. So that's just a small addition to our, you know, it can be the most perfect waterway with access points, you know, maybe maintained all along the way by the Fish and Boat Commission. But if they don't actually take on ownership as being an organization that someone can contact them, there's a map, you know, there's resources like that. Then in Pennsylvania, at least, it's just a pleasant waterway to recreate on, but not a water trail.
Yeah, and you know, there are also things called rivers that you paddle on. There are dozens of thousands of them, and they are not water trails. So water trails are a pretty recent concept, you know, several decades, but it's pretty recent. Rivers have been around for a really long time. So one initiative that isn't a priority for anyone here probably, but something that I've been interested in for a while, and that is, so we'll deal with this separately maybe from the working group, but it's to define it. You know, if you're a national water trail you know, acknowledged by the National Park Service, there are elements of that that are awesome. You know, maybe that's the gold standard for the things that you want to have in place for your organization. That's a water trail organization. But you can also be a 2-mile long water trail that's near your house that has a sign at the beginning, at the end, and you call it the Joe Blow's Water Trail. So identifying difficulty, length, amenities, all the things that you would want to know about a water trail that might just be on a river. You know, I would love for us to define that, because otherwise I think that we will misrepresent a recreational opportunity to someone or some family, not from a liability standpoint. We'll just misrepresent it. So someone will get on a stretch of river and have to go 9 miles and be angry because they thought water trails had access points every 2 miles because someone told them that. You know,
Yeah.
just picking an example.
Right.
So I'm hoping that that can be at least sort of a guiding initiative that we work on. That will take a while, you know, but
Uh,
I think it would benefit the public to have that.
These are
Lisa,
the,
can I jump in for real quick on
Yes,
that?
yeah, James, go for it.
I think it's a really good opportunity for a working group like this too, to be able to share the data. So for us GIS folks and more map-based folks, you know, to sort of have a framework of the things that are important for blueways and water trails to collect. So like I said, so like how we have the National Rivers Project, and we have a bunch of different attributes that we collect for each river reach and for the campgrounds associated with it and access points, and sort of have like, if that's something that we'd be happy to distribute, and then people can sort of like base their data collection off of something like that, and then make it their own. Because for instance, like I think Brad is here, but the Tennessee River line sort of uses the same data collection framework that we do. So the same attributes in a lot of ways and work together with that. But then they make it local and make it even better by collecting a lot of things that we don't collect at the national scale, but is really awesome for the Tennessee River line on a local scale, such as, you know, where you can, you know, get gas, or, you know, where the restaurants are and things like that. And I think that's a really great opportunity for us to be able to help each other.
yeah, I was just gonna say something similar. I mean, I think we're gonna bump up against each other in what the definition is, and I'm hoping our mission isn't to, you know, identify nationally what a water trail is, because I mean, in Iowa, we look at a water trail user as a power boater as well. I mean, you know, it's not my preference. It's not my type of activity that I like to engage in, but people are using the river, and I know in some cases, you know, a lot of people will just you know, default water trail user as a paddler, someone who kayaks, canoes, or maybe tubes. But we've really learned not to get too narrow in our thinking, because we've learned a lot in, well, the 14 years that I've been here. We see a lot of people that just like to hang out by the water. They don't like to be on the water, but they like to hang out by the water. So how can we reach those folks, and how can we improve their experiences as well? There are other people. Think about anglers too. Are those water trail users? I mean, these are questions that I think every state has to chew on. But anyway, yeah, we're probably coming up on our hour here. But
Yeah.
you know, yeah, I think we have to be careful about coming up with the ideal. But like someone said earlier, I think no matter how different our state system or our local system, water trail system is, we're all gonna be, you know, working through similar issues, right? Like log jams, or who owns the river, or who owns the banks, who owns the riverbed, and things like that. So I think we can, yeah, we can all benefit from this, despite however we define what a water trail is.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. And thanks everybody for sharing all these ideas. I think we've got a really exciting road ahead. We've got a few just closing slides, links, upcoming events to share, and then I'd be happy to stay on a few more minutes for folks who'd like to. If you have not already completed the survey that we've been talking about for the last hour, so hopefully you know what survey we're talking about, we'd love to hear from you. We'll keep that open for a little bit. Feel free to share with your water trail colleagues. Want to thank Tali and John so much for putting in several hours planning and organizing, Risa and James, and for just helping to create this group that looks like it's going to be really fruitful. I also shared a link in the chat. RMS has a YouTube channel with a variety of different playlists. One of them is all of the recordings from our past river management roundtables. So if you want to go back and watch the December and January roundtables, they talk about water trails, and that was sort of where this idea was born. And we'll also email out the recording from today to you all, so that'll come in your inbox as well. A few upcoming events, Reading the Rapids of Sexism and Sexual Harassment. This is hosted by AOR and features an A- collaborative consultant and trainer named Emily Ambrose. That's going to be really interesting. It's specific for folks who work on rivers. So I'd encourage you to check that out. We have a couple of chapter trips coming up. Our Northwest chapter is going to be paddling the Middle Fork Flathead on July 17th. Not listed here, but also coming up, our Pacific chapter is going to be paddling the Kern River August 9th through 11th. And the Southeast chapter is going to be paddling the James River and getting together for some festivities in Richmond the last weekend of September. So there's some regional opportunities to network and learn some things. Our next river management roundtable is August 13th. It is going to daylight the fish barrier debate. It's called Protecting Endangered Fish and Free-Flowing Rivers. And we'll talk about the kind of how the Endangered Species Act and the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act conflict with each other in terms of fish barriers. So pretty interesting debate and topic. Finally, this is a big annual event that we host every year called the River Ranger Rendezvous. It's an opportunity for river rangers and managers of river rangers to get together. I think it's actually September 8th through the 13th. But nonetheless, Desolation Canyon, Green River, Utah. It's an excellent opportunity for rangers to network. It's also a great time to learn together and talk about topics that are specific for those folks. We will share a link to a feedback survey. Like we said, we host these roundtables every month. We'd love to know what you think of them, how we could do better, and to hear your ideas for a future topic. So we invite you to share those, and I'll put the link to that survey in the chat. If you share your thoughts now, you don't have to do it later, and they'll be fresh in your mind. All right. And thanks, everyone. I'd be happy to stay on. I know folks have to go, but we appreciate you so much. And we're so excited for what's next for this group and how everybody can work together.
Thank you for being here. See you again soon, hopefully.
Thank you for your excitement. We can't wait to ping those of you who said you would help us serve on the steering committee. We have your email addresses, so we'll be following up.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.